I used to think the worst day of my life was the day we buried my mother. But I was wrong. The worst day came just 2 weeks later, when I found my little brother sitting in the storage room, crying quietly into a pillow, surrounded by boxes, while my father helped two strangers move into our home, like they owned the place. "I'm sorry," I whispered, kneeling beside him. He shook his head and wiped his face. "They gave her mom's room," he mumbled. "And they gave us this." His voice cracked. Her. The new wife. The one no one knew existed until the funeral was over. She arrived in a black SUV with two teenage daughters dressed like they were going to a party. One of them literally wore heels with diamonds on the toes. I remember watching them get out, laughing, giggling, acting like this wasn't the house where our mother just died. I stood in the hallway that day, frozen, holding a tray of tea I had made for my dad, because that's what Mom would have done. But he didn't look at me. He didn't even introduce me. Just walked ahead and opened the front door wider, like this was something he had been waiting for. Later that night, I asked him, "Who are they?" He looked tired, or maybe he just didn't want to answer. "Your family," he said flatly. "They were always part of this family. It's time you accepted that." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the teacup I was still holding. But I didn't. Because my little brother was behind me. Because someone had to stay calm. The next morning, the house felt different. Our things were boxed and pushed aside. Mom's favorite dishes were gone. Her plants were replaced by plastic ones. And when I walked into what used to be her room, I saw one of the daughters, sprawled on the bed with earbuds in, tossing her diamond shoes onto the floor like it meant nothing. I stood there for a second too long. "Can I help you?" she asked without even taking her headphones out. Her voice was sweet, fake, coated in the kind of sugar that hides poison. I didn't answer, just turned around and walked away. That night, I found my brother again, still in the storage room. "They get her bedroom," he said. "And we get this." I didn't have a reply. I just sat beside him, leaned my head on his shoulder, and whispered, "We won't stay invisible forever." But even then, I didn't know just how much my mother had truly seen. The next few days felt like a bad dream no one would let me wake up from. Every corner of the house was changing, not slowly, but violently, like someone was ripping out the roots of who we used to be. The new wife, Layla, didn't act like she was new. She walked around like a queen returning to a castle she'd always owned. She ordered the driver to move my mother's car. She had the dining chairs reupholstered. She told the maid, "No need to keep those old tablecloths." That was my mother's favorite pattern, a soft yellow with tiny embroidered birds. Gone in seconds. My father watched it all with dead eyes. Sometimes I caught him standing in the hallway, staring at nothing. I wondered if he even knew who he was anymore. Or maybe he had always been this man, and I was only now seeing him clearly. What broke me wasn't the way they took her room. It was how easily they rewrote history. Layla told my aunt during tea, "We've always meant to make this our family home. It just took time." My aunt blinked, confused. She looked at me, but I said nothing. What could I say? The truth? That this woman had been hidden in the shadows of my father's life, while my mother fought cancer alone? The girls were worse. One day I came home from a walk and found them in the living room trying on my mother's scarves like it was some kind of fashion show. One of them, the younger one, Zoya, held up a red one with gold stitching and said, "This makes me look like royalty." The older one, Sanaa, laughed. "More like a poor imitation of one." I snapped. "Put them back." They both turned startled. "Relax," Zoya said, rolling her eyes. "It's not like she needs them anymore." That hit harder than anything else. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked over, took the scarf from her hand, and folded it neatly. Then I turned and left the room. But inside, something was breaking, splintering. My mother's memory wasn't fading. It was being erased. Later that night, I found my father in his study. I asked him, "Do you remember what Mom wore the night you took her to the hospital?" He looked up, confused. What? She wore that red scarf, I said. The one your new daughter just said wasn't needed anymore. He said nothing, just blinked at me like he didn't understand what I was trying to say. But I wasn't speaking for him anymore. I was speaking for her, for my mother, for my brother, for all the quiet that had swallowed us whole. And I was beginning to realize silence wasn't survival anymore. It was surrender. I wish I could say things settled down, that maybe, with time, we learned to exist together in that house like uneasy furniture, still distant, but surviving. But that would be a lie. Layla didn't just take my mother's place. She remodeled the rules of our home. My brother and I became shadows overnight. Invisible unless needed, silent unless spoken to, and always, always last. At dinner, we sat at the far edge of the table, near the kitchen door. My father hardly looked our way anymore. He only spoke when Layla wasn't in the room. She'd flash him a glance, and he'd fold into silence, like a paper man afraid of getting wet. The girls, though, they were treated like royalty. New phones, designer handbags, a weekend beach trip that I heard about only through an Instagram post one of them accidentally made public. My brother, Hamza, was 16, smart, quiet, and always trying to keep peace. He stopped asking our father for school fees after Layla accidentally lost his documents twice. His teachers called me, not Dad, to say he might not be able to sit for his exams if the payments didn't come in. I paid what I could for my tutoring work, but I saw it in Hamza's eyes every night, the weight of being unwanted. He wasn't angry, just tired. So tired. One afternoon, I overheard Layla talking on the phone in the hallway. Her voice was low, sharp. Why should I pay for someone else's leftovers? If his real mother cared so much, she would have made sure they had something. She didn't, so now they're ours to manage. Leftovers. That's what we were. I couldn't breathe. I went to the storeroom, the one Hamza and I now shared, and sat on the floor, shaking. I didn't cry. Not right away. But my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I reached for something, anything, to anchor myself. And that's when I saw it. My mother's old prayer book. It had been resting untouched on the top shelf for months. I pulled it down, dust flying up in little clouds, and opened it carefully. There was a note inside. Faded ink. My mother's handwriting. Alina, if things get too dark, look inside the spine. There's a key. One day, you'll know what it's for. I froze. I turned the book to its spine and gently peeled the lining back. And there it was. A tiny, silver key. Cold and silent, but screaming with meaning. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, holding the key in my hand, heart pounding like a drum. I didn't know what it opened yet, but I knew one thing for sure. My mother hadn't left us with nothing. The next morning, I took a bus across town with nothing but that key in my hand and my mother's words echoing in my head. You'll know what it's for. I didn't know how, but I felt drawn to the old neighborhood bank where she used to go every other Friday. I still remembered the branch manager's name, Mr. Farouk. He had kind eyes and once gave me candy when I came in holding my mother's hand. When I showed him the key, he paused, then walked to the back without a word. A few minutes later, he returned, holding a small safety deposit box. I was told, he said gently, to give you this if you ever brought that key. My hands were sweating as I reached for the box. Inside was everything I didn't know I needed. There were 2 velvet pouches, one with her wedding jewelry and the other with some modest savings. Not millions, but enough to breathe. And beneath it all, folded neatly, was a handwritten letter. My Alina, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and that your father has failed you in ways I tried to protect you from. I couldn't stop everything, but I could give you a seed. A small start. This money is yours, not theirs. Use it however you see fit. Pay for your brother's school. Pay for your freedom. Build a life that doesn't depend on anyone's approval but your own. You don't belong to their world. You were always meant to rise beyond it. Love, Mom. I read that letter 3 times before the tears came. Not just because of the words, but because for the first time since she died, I felt her holding me again. I used that money carefully. I paid Hamza's tuition first, watched his shoulders lighten and his laughter return. Then I paid mine. No more borrowed books. No more skipped meals. Just quiet determination. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Hamza. Not yet. And then I left. I packed my bag and walked out of the house I was no longer welcome in. I didn't make a scene. I didn't write a note. I just left the way we always wished to be treated, without drama, without yelling, without begging. A week later, Hamza showed up at my apartment door with a small duffel bag and eyes full of fire. "I can't stay there anymore," he said. "I'd rather sleep on the floor here than be their charity." I didn't cry in front of him. I just hugged him tight. We didn't have much. A small one-room flat. 2 mattresses on the ground. But it was ours. And for the first time in years, we felt free. We had no backup. No father. No inheritance. But we had each other. And we had a letter that reminded us exactly what we were capable of. The days that followed weren't glamorous. They were gritty, messy, tiring. But they were ours. I got a part-time job at a local design firm. Nothing big, just entry-level graphic layouts and social media banners. At night, I freelanced. I sold logo packages on Fiverr, edited resumes, anything I could find. The work was thankless sometimes. Clients ghosted me. Payments were late. But I kept going. I turned our living room into a co-working space. Hamza studied while I worked. We shared one small desk, one cracked laptop, and one dream: to never depend on anyone who made us feel small again. A year passed. Then 2. And slowly things started to shift. My side gigs grew into regular clients. I registered my own agency. Just me, a Canvas subscription, and faith. I called it Bright North, because even when everything collapsed, we still had direction. Hamza got into university on scholarship. Full ride. I cried the day he opened the letter, and he just hugged me and said, "You did this." "No," I said, voice shaking. "We did. We didn't talk about our father. Not much. But I saw how it lived in both of us. The hunger, the ache to prove we were more than what he left behind." 3 years later, I got the call. It was from a young, fast-rising financial tech company that had been watching my agency grow. They wanted to merge. No corporate nonsense, a real partnership. They liked how I ran things lean, ethical, efficient, relatable branding. I said yes. The paperwork was long. The meetings were longer. But the moment I saw the finalized merger documents, one name jumped out at me. Eastern Horizons Finance Corp. That was my father's company. I blinked, stunned. Then I checked the next document, a list of retained senior executives. And there it was. Farhan R. Malik, Senior Accounts Director. My breath caught. All these years, all this time, he had stayed in his comfortable little tower while we clawed our way out of the dirt. And now, I wasn't just merging with a company. I was acquiring the one he worked for. Not as a quiet little employee, but as a majority shareholder. It felt surreal. I stared at the list for a long time. I thought I'd feel anger, or satisfaction, or revenge. But all I felt was peace. He didn't even know. Not yet. But he would. Because in exactly 2 weeks, I was scheduled to attend the quarterly board meeting. And this time, when I walked through that boardroom door, it wouldn't be his daughter. It would be as the woman he never thought I'd become. I walked into that boardroom in silence. No entourage. No flashy outfit. Just a fitted black blazer, crisp white blouse, and heels that clicked like a countdown. No one recognized me at first. Not even him. He was sitting third from the left, skimming through reports, talking numbers, wearing the same smug expression he always did, the one that said the world belonged to him. Until he looked up. Our eyes met. He froze. For a second, he blinked like he was trying to place me. And then I saw it, the flicker of realization. The way his jaw clenched. the slight widening of his eyes. He knew. I sat at the head of the table.
He didn't speak. Not yet.
But I could feel the panic start to rise in him. It was subtle, but there. The meeting began like any other: market summaries, merger logistics, projections. But when it came time to discuss department restructuring, I opened a folder, slid a sealed envelope across the table.
Right to him. He looked down.
Then up. "What's this?" he asked, his voice calm, but I could hear the quiver underneath. "Your exit package," I said. Silence. The whole room went still. He stared at me like he didn't understand the words. Or maybe he didn't believe them. "You're letting me go?" he said finally. "No," I replied. "I'm letting you step down. With whatever dignity you have left." He let out a bitter laugh. "This is personal. Everything you did to us was personal," I said, my voice steady. "But this is just business. You don't get to come back after all these years and—" "I didn't come back," I interrupted. "I rose, while you sank into a life you built on lies." His face flushed. "You don't understand." "No," I said, leaning forward. "You don't. You gave everything to people who saw you as a paycheck. And you threw away the ones who would have stayed."
"Who needs you?"
He opened his mouth again, but I raised a hand. "I'm not here for closure, or apologies, or explanations. I'm here because I built something better. And now you answer me." The room was silent. No one moved. After a long pause, he stood.
Slow. Stiff.
He didn't say another word. He just picked up the envelope, tucked it under his arm, and walked out. I didn't watch him leave. I turned back to the agenda. That night, I drove past the old family house, the one he had once signed over to my stepmother. I had bought it back quietly 2 weeks ago, all in cash. It was empty now, cold, hollow, like the promises made inside it. A car was parked outside, my stepmother's. She stood by the gate, eyes wild, phone clutched in her hand. She ran toward me when she saw the car. "Please," she said, voice shaky. "You can't do this." I rolled down the window. "You did it first," I said. "She's your sister." "She's not," I said calmly. "She was your excuse. Your pawn. She's your blood." "No," I said. "Hamza is my blood. And he deserved better." Tears slipped down her face. We were struggling. I didn't respond. I just drove away. Later that night, I sat on the rooftop of my apartment, same one I started my business in. Hamza sat beside me, now taller than I remembered, his head resting back against the wall. "You really fired him?" he asked. "Yeah." He chuckled softly. "You didn't even yell." "No," I said. "I didn't need to." We sat in silence for a while. Then he said, "Do you think Mom saw this coming?" I looked up at the stars. The same sky she used to pray under. "She didn't just see it," I whispered. "She built it. Quietly. Brick by brick." He nodded. "She left us with nothing." I smiled.
"No."
"She left us with everything we ever needed." And as the wind blew gently through my hair, I finally understood something. Revenge doesn't always need to be loud. Sometimes, the most powerful justice is the silence that follows a victory no one saw coming.